Okay, we're back at Holden today. I don't know how this is going to go because it's sprinkling on and off. It just stopped and now it started again. And there were some raindrops on the lens, so I don't know. This may not work today, but I just decided to come out for a morning walk because yesterday was a very chaotic day for me, just between personal things and work and everything else, and I wasn't able to get out at all. And to me it feels, when I'm not able to get out for a walk at least once a day, I go stir crazy. And so today, even though it's raining on and off, I'm gonna have a very busy work week just based on deadlines that I have coming up. So I really wanted to get out, make sure I got some kind of walk in here, and before I start my day and start my week. So here I am. It's a rainy day, Tuesday morning, a little early in the morning, so that's always good. Got my chores done quickly, just a lot of things related to taking care of animals and the house and things like that. So I'm ready to go, and it feels good to be out here moving. You know, it's so important to move and to walk, and I've been doing a lot of talking, but the most important thing that I've been doing is just getting out, moving. It's so important to keep the body moving. I mean, not just for any particular reason, just it's enjoyable to do that, So it's that's the most important thing. It's kind of, maybe it's overlooked or it's glossed over in all this, but all the while that I'm talking about all this stuff, I'm walking. I'm walking through nature. I'm outside. I'm taking a break from the routine. And it's kind of the hidden message, I guess, in all of this. Right? I'm not just sitting at a desk at home or at a coffee shop talking. I'm moving. And it's important to move and to get out. And the one thing I would encourage everyone to do is turn the video off and go outside. Right? I'm out here walking, so whether I'm talking or I'm not talking, I'm still enjoying myself, I guess you could say, right? This is joy to me, and joy. I mean, I have joy by just coming outside, rain or shine, walking as long as I can walk. We never know what's going to happen to our bodies over time. I know for sure they will decay. All conditioned things decay and get old and wear out, and it's just the natural order of things, right? So it's inevitable that a time will come when I won't be able to do this. I don't know how long that'll be. Tomorrow, next week, a year, 10 years, 50 years. I mean, who can tell? And that's why it doesn't matter if you get out every day. You know that you're making use of every day as best as possible, regardless of time. Don't worry about time. The future will be what the future will be. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future. We've talked about that a lot. But what isn't uncertain is that we are here now, here today, and you can be outside today. I mean, condition permitting. Yesterday, like I said, I wasn't able to, so sometimes circumstances arise that interfere with that, but it still doesn't mean that you don't try to find the time to just spend a little bit of time outside. And I was outside in my backyard. There was some things I had to do. It's starting to rain harder. We'll see how this goes. Oh no, that's the wind. think that's the wind blowing through the trees, which is awesome. But it made it sound like a billion little raindrops landing on the leaves, which is cool, right? Just that, you know, just hearing the sound of the wind through the leaves, or raindrops on the leaves, is, you know, it's kind of, there's all these forgotten things maybe that I would say when we were younger we paid more attention to, that now as we get older we may not. I don't know. Hi. You know, I think about when I was younger and I would, you know, watch the raindrops falling down. Hi. You know, I remember being in a car and watching the raindrops falling down the windshield. That always fascinated me. The little rivulets of water draining down the window, and then you have some isolated drops and they join up, and you know, the little rivulet takes a path, a meandering path, and maybe absorbs some of the stationary drops, and if the car is moving, it moves, the wind is pushing it back. And you know, it's just funny the fascinating things you can see just by looking around, like what's happening now, and how amazing everything is if you look, if you just pay attention. You know, it's not even like go into anything intently, like just pay attention to everything, because everything is amazing when you watch it. You know, and that's what is true. You know, is like if you just see everything that's happening, like right now, by walking, there's so much going on. You know, and not that you have to like try to pay it, you know, look at everything and start, you know, you can't focus on everything, right? You can only focus on one thing at a time. So focusing, which you could call concentration, right, is another thing. It's not attention or awareness. It's when you focus on something, you limit your awareness to everything else. So this is often referred to as concentration. And a lot of meditative techniques are concentration, right? You focus your attention on a burning candle, or you repeat a mantra over and over, or you you know, obtain a certain posture, and you watch the movements of your body, and you try to maintain like a certain breathing or posture, but you're focusing your attention on that. And in the process of focusing on one thing, you're now blocking everything else out, right? And that's the reason why concentration is like, you know, so many people do it. You know, it's a very common so-called meditative technique, but what's the purpose? You know, and I think what's interesting is a lot of people, they're trying to silence the mind, right? So by focusing on one thing, they hope to silence the mind, but they're still focusing on that one thing. So it's not silent, it's just focused. And maybe eventually you lose that focus and enter into some other meditative state like the jhanas, where it's, you know, depending on how people look at that, you know, you can reach some point where it's like infinite space, infinite time. You know, they have names for all these things, where you start losing a sense of space and time and all that. And then, you know, people claim that through that process, you obtain something, you achieve something, right? Peace, or maybe just an awareness of like another state of consciousness, or whatever. And I believe that is likely true. There's a number of people who have written books about such meditative practices, have YouTube videos. A lot of Buddhist tradition is based on that, depending on which tradition, but there are many approaches that sort of require this focus of attention to start with anyways, leading to other states of consciousness. And that's all well and fine. you will reach other states of consciousness, but it's not clear to me how that helps you gain wisdom. Because wisdom, I mean, there's a certain amount of wisdom to recognizing that this state of consciousness that you're in is not the only state of consciousness, but it's the state of we live in, right? We live in this state of consciousness, not that deep meditative state of consciousness. So whatever happens there is temporary. You can enter some deep state of meditation for a while, experience whatever you want to experience, because the brain is, you know, can enter different states, right? It's like a machine where, you know, you could throw a switch and be in state A, B, or C, and A maybe is our normal state and B is some meditative state, and people can get really good at that, at entering these different states. But then you have to be really careful, because, like, are you proud of that? You know, because you can achieve some altered state of consciousness. If you are, that's an expression of the ego, right? That I have attained something, right? And by attaining that, I've strengthened my ego because I've attained it. Other people have not attained it. It sets me apart. I'm different. And maybe now you think you want to become a teacher and teach other people how to do this thing. So now you feel, you know, like you've acquired, you're different, you're set apart, you're elevated in some way. And if that's what happens, then it's a reinforcement of this ego, right? And the wisdom is understanding that ego, not entering deep meditative trances or hypnosis or whatever you want to call it. A lot of it's sort of like self-hypnosis. Just like, you know, certain people can climb mountains, and that's an achievement, and then other people can obtain deep meditative states like this, or deep trance-like states, we should say, like that. But there's a big so what behind it all, and I don't know, you know, it's like the real wisdom is living this life the way that we live it, in the normal waking state where you're aware of everything, observant of everything, and just being fully aware in that state, in that normal everyday awareness, not needing to enter altered states of consciousness. And, you know, maybe there will be, you know, when you're paying attention, some sort of shift or something may happen, who knows, but it's not an intentional thing. You're not driving towards it. You don't have the desire, because a lot of this is desire, right? If you're practicing something, you have a desire to reach something. So any form of practice, no matter what it is, meditative or otherwise, is like a skill you want to acquire, an achievement you want to reach, and it's just, you have to consider that, you know, that is the majority of what happens with people who do traditional meditative approaches, you know, or, you know, and it's kind of funny because the Buddha himself, like even the Eightfold Path, which we talked about there being no path, but that path is comprised of wisdom. I mean, you could break it down into like 3 general categories, and there's categories on meditation or concentration. You know, there's also steps related to wisdom, and then there's also steps related to ethics, you know, good living. And I think people, when they think of that, and they go, well, I got to start, you know, where do you start? And, you know, because it's broken down into all these steps, they have all these ideas in their mind about what all these different steps are. But even if you just step back from that for a second and say that there's sort of 3 things there: wisdom, concentration, and ethics, that all need to be together, not separate. And wisdom, like silence, can come from wisdom. You know, understanding truth. You know, if you understand and pay attention to what's happening in your normal waking life, then you're observing truth. And in the observation of truth, gaining wisdom, not knowledge, but some sort of wisdom, understanding of how things are in that moment, not the past moment, remembering it and carrying it with you, but in that moment, you're aware of what's happening. And that wisdom of the moment, right? That awareness of now, not awareness of even 1 second ago, or not that I'm getting better, I'm achieving something. A minute ago I was this, and now I'm this, and look at the progress I'm making. Like, anytime it retreats to that sort of comparison, first of all, it's thought, all thought entering, right? There's no comparison without thought. If you have no thought, you're not comparing. And there's no, I'm different now, I'm better now, I've achieved something. It just is what it is in the moment. No comparison with the past. No wondering, have I achieved something or not achieved something? It's the letting go of all achievement, all striving towards achieving something, right? And that's why I say this is the simplest thing of all. It's not, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do but stop doing, right? And if stop doing becomes doing, now you're in trouble. Because how do you stop doing by doing? So, I think, it's a quandary, right? And this is why I think so many people get messed up and caught up, because, you can be a Buddhist practitioner and living in a monastery for 30 years, and you memorize suttas and become knowledgeable in Buddhist texts and knowledgeable of Buddhist practices and become a machine in that way, right? Become a trained monkey or a machine, because you've gained all this knowledge that you think you have now that you didn't have when you came through the doors on day one, right? So you're comparing yourself. I'm sure you wake up and say, okay, look how much I know now that I didn't know 30 years ago when I first stepped through the doors of this monastery. And maybe you're very proud of that achievement. Look at what I've done. But don't you see that very act of being proud of anything, right? Any achievement is a reinforcement of the ego. It can mask itself in so many ways. It can mask itself as humility, as whatever you want to call being a monk is. Way separating yourself from the busy material world, cultivating what you think are positive steps, but you can't cultivate love and compassion, much to the dismay, I think, of mostly every Buddhist practitioner who puts that, even the Dalai Lama will say that he's cultivating goodness, right? Cultivating compassion. It's like, how are you cultivating compassion? Like, that sounds like a process to me, and it sounds like something you're trying to achieve. And this is the thing, right? You don't become a very popular person by questioning everybody, including the Dalai Lama. But I'm not out to be popular. I'm not out to gain any recognition whatsoever. I just speak the truth as I see it, or as it flows through me, however you want to put it. And again, I don't believe there's anything special about me that allows truth. It's like I'm just seeing things, observing things, and talking about what I'm observing. And it may be truth, it may not be truth, it may be false. But this is, one must do this. I guess if there's any sort of process, the only process is having no process, but just observing. And you could call, observation is a process, but it's not a process of time. If you're observing without the past interfering, there is no time, there is no accumulation, there's no direction. It's directionless observation, not with a goal in mind. It's just observing, just coming out and paying attention, to what is around you. And how is that a process? It's not a process at all, unless you make it a process. You could make it a process, right? If you start saying, well, that is my process, I'm going to get out, I'm going to walk, I'm going to do these things. And if you start letting it become a routine even, which you could argue is maybe what I'm even doing here by making these videos. But I don't feel that it is, because at any moment I can stop, at any moment I can decide that I want to do something different, or just do something different, not decide. It's just what's happening now. I don't think there's any end goal. I don't think there's any accumulation worth speaking. These are just things that, as I walk, which I do every day anyways, just allowing words to flow, not directing these words, which I had no idea what words are going to come out of my mouth today, and they just come, and they come partly, through, what I'm observing. It is, there is some chain of thinking that's occurring, I suppose. I don't worry about it, I don't wonder what the process is of word creation that's occurring. Just let things go. Let things unfold the way they unfold. Like it rains, it doesn't rain. In the same way, I speak, I don't speak. And for no particular reason, one way or the other. But, and that's, I guess, just to get back to like the fact that we're just walking here, right? We're not really doing anything other than walk. As I'm passing by, I'm looking at all the plants, these little, I don't know what they are. Interesting little plant. And just seeing all the diversity of life, and what's amazing, right, is that life is there regardless of what I think or don't think, or believe or don't believe. That's still there, right? And that's what truth is, right? Truth doesn't depend on what you believe, doesn't depend on what you think, doesn't depend on if you're in a good mood or a bad mood, or if it's raining or it's not raining, or if you're feeling together today or not together, or angry or sad, or whatever state your mind is in. It doesn't change these plants. They're still these plants. You can choose to not observe them. You can choose to ignore them, and your state of mind may alter how you see them. Because if you're thinking, all the knowledge you have about plants, and you're trying to figure out what type of plant it is, searching your memory for that, as opposed to just seeing what it is without all that knowledge, without all of that accumulation. Yeah, that can happen. But if you can just see the plants for the plants without all that interfering, they're just there doing their thing. They've been here doing their thing. Before I came, they're doing their thing now, they're doing their thing after I came. And truth is kind of like that, because that is truth. The truth is, that is what's happening, and that is what is, without anything to do with my mind. My thought didn't create these plants, and the only thing that can happen is if my thoughts start interfering with what I'm observing in this moment and making something of it, one way or the other. Oh, I need to get that plant and bring it home. Or it's a beautiful plant, maybe I should pick it and put it in a vase at home so I can keep it, or maybe I should go buy some plants. It reminds me of the garden, and maybe what I want to plant in the garden, right? See, this is how thought can take off, and then you're lost, right? At that point, you're lost. You're lost in a world of thoughts, not paying attention anymore to what's actually there. And this is how we live most of our life. The truth, there's reflections of truth, pale emanations of truth through our observations, through our senses, right, that are there always. But we mess it up, by not just letting it be. We have to grab it, we have to take it, we have to shift it, transform it, try to make it something useful. I always find it interesting when people frame things in terms of the use of something, I can't remember what it was. There was an article I read the other day, or came across, I guess I didn't read it, just briefly scanned it, that talked about something in terms of its utility, which is often how we see everything in nature. How am I going to use that thing? How is it useful to me? And I don't care about it until it's useful. And if it's not useful, I just ignore it. And I just always think, what a horrible viewpoint to look at the world through that selfish lens, that things only derive importance if I can use it. to achieve, to fulfill a desire or something. Like, why can't you just see the beauty in things without worrying about how you're going to use that thing or how useful that thing is? So we might talk about plants and animals, and then plants that are medicinal, so then now they have a use. And we like to look at weeds, which I've never liked that whole classification of weeds and flowers and such, because like a weed is basically a useless plant, right? A plant that serves no purpose other than surviving. Sometimes weeds are the most capable of surviving on their own, right? They don't require any cultivation or anything. They can grow in the wild and whatnot. But like if they appear in our yard or our garden, we want to pluck them and pull them out because they're not pretty. They're not to our liking. Which I will admit that I don't weed my garden, my house, my yard as much as probably many other people do. And some of it is for that reason, because I feel like it all has a purpose, right? It doesn't have to have a purpose. It just is. And who am I to like determine what persists and what doesn't persist? Why do I need to interfere with nature doing what it wants to do? And not impose my will on everything, not try to shape this world according to my will. And when you think of all the trouble we're in right now, so much of it is because we try to shape the world according to our will, right? We want something. We want a house and a yard to look a certain way. We use chemicals on our lawn. I don't. But some people use chemicals on their lawn to make it look a certain way, right? And everything has to be just so. And then we feel satisfied when things are, but then inevitably things happen that we can't control, and then we get upset if, our grass dies or something in the garden dies, and then now that ideal that we had has been disrupted, and we try to bring it back, right? But when you think of everybody just pursuing their own individual desires in that way, my house, my yard, my, is contributing to so many of the problems in our world. Instead of it being like our planet, our living together, and even in this country, the way we live, we live in these isolated little houses and, next to each other, but like everybody stakes their claim, probably more so here in the United States than maybe elsewhere, but like our little space is our space, and, we keep intruders out, and we have a sense of possession. And honestly, I don't, I have a house, right? I have a yard, just like other people. But like, I don't feel that attached to it. And maybe that's why I don't try to perfect it. I don't try to make it be perfect. I do certain things, but like, I don't, it's not like my pride and joy. It's like if I had to move or live in another house or live in somewhere else, it doesn't matter to me. Like it's not anything that, I'm holding on to. It's just simply where we live right now. We could live somewhere else in the future, and it wouldn't affect me at all. Like, I don't see it as like a possession that I'm building up in my mind, the importance of. Obviously, I want it to function, so I want to keep it functional as much as possible, but not just, it's just not necessary for it to be like perfect in any way, and it certainly isn't. So I just feel like that it's our attitude, right, towards things that we can examine. But again, you don't want to get in the habit of saying, okay, I want to examine all these things I do in my life and come up with a plan for correcting it, because that just adds to the problem. I think it's more important that we just observe what's happening without worrying about the plan to correct it, because you judge, or if you judge and have an opinion, then you're judging, and that's thought. It's thought again saying, oh, I shouldn't be this way, right? So it's just as bad to say, okay, this is how we are, and we should be some other way. So I should totally neglect my yard, neglect my house. Like, that's not what we're saying either. Like, it's nowhere. This is where real intelligence comes in, not through this judging and opinion process, but by just observing what is. And the intelligence acts. And it's not as simple as a rule to live by. You know, you can't come up with a rule that you should or should not mow your lawn, right? Or you should or should not do something, because you're basically creating a code of ethics or rules. When you have a rule like that, you're letting the past dictate the future, because that rule comes from the past, some knowledge that you have, and now you're applying that rule in the future. And the very application of a rule like that, no matter how simple it is the past interfering, with the present. Like, if we really just see things as they are now, we don't concern ourselves one way or the other with these things. It's not, I should or shouldn't do anything. It's just observe and be aware of what's happening now, regardless of what it is. And don't label it as good or bad, or I should or shouldn't, or whatever we may want to do. Just let it be, in a sense. Reminds me of the song by the Beatles, which is a very good song, because in a lot of ways, that is, again, not to be a rule, not to make a rule to let it be, but a lot of times keeping your hands off of it and not feeling like you need to control everything according to your liking is often a more peaceful state to be, I guess you could say, right? Not that you don't have challenges that you have to deal with, and as they arise, you deal with them. But when you formulate rules, right, when you formulate systems, no matter how simple it is, it could just be, you may reject all rule systems that society has conditioned you with. You may reject all religions, right, and feel good about yourself for doing that. And then you may reject all political beliefs, right, because you have political systems, capitalism, communism, socialism, whatever. And there's a million others. So it's like whatever you have picked as your ideology, whether religious, political, or national. Maybe you're a nationalist of some kind. You believe in your nation. America first is a great example of that. But I mean, every country, anytime you hold your, I belong to this tribe that I call the United States, or that I call Mexico or Canada. And now my belonging to that tribe dictates how I behave and act and respond. It's just observing all that, observing that if that's what you do, then observe that that's what you do. And the observing will bring about the intelligence that will be aware of that and know what to do with that. Right? Intelligence sort of has action built into it. And that when you're aware of that, right, then the next thing is, well, what do I do about that? Or what should I do about that? Should I not, join political parties, not participate in activities or events, because everything could be viewed in that way? And again, it's like, but that's thought trying to figure it out. Right? So, and this is what's so confusing, because there's nothing to say about it. Because anything you can say about it would be thought giving you a recipe to fix it or live by it. You don't need anyone to tell you anything, including yourself, your own thoughts, for how to behave, how to interact. Just let the intelligence of insight guide action, right? Intelligence of the moment knows what to do. Not in the sense of knowledge, but in the sense of just that awareness. Like that when you're aware of a problem, the solution is already there to that problem, right? That it's only a problem because you're not looking at it carefully enough. When you look at it carefully enough, there is no problem. It's clear. It's like a problem is often a problem because you're just not looking close enough, right? Carefully enough. You've made it a problem. Like, sure, we have challenges in life, but we may not have problems. And, you can say, maybe some people would say they never have problems. And it's not that things don't arise in their life that require attention. It's more about the attitude that one has towards those things that arise. And do you just observe what's happening? And then in that observation, action occurs, I want to say simultaneously, but that brings in time, but just the seeing is the doing. We mentioned this in the previous video. And not that I can come up with a rule from my past observation, but just the seeing is the doing. Just pay attention to what's happening. And I always say, I've said this again and I keep repeating it, but even in my work and in other things, I've always sort of repeated something that I find to be useful in areas like that, which is that the solution to every problem is within the problem itself if you understand the problem well enough. Well, it's there whether you understand it or not, but by understanding the problem, you naturally are solving it, whether you realize or not. It's not that there's a step of understanding the problem and then a separate step of solving the problem. It's like that just understanding of the problem is solving the problem, because you understand it, and by understanding it and you're aware of it, the solution just naturally blossoms, just naturally comes out of it. And so every day of our life could be regarded as a problem, right, if we make it a problem. Or it can just be challenges, or what comes at us. The word problem actually means, I think the origin of it means something that is thrown at you. A challenge, right? It's thrown at you like a ball, and you have to catch the ball or do something with that challenge. And just in the same way, right, if someone throws a ball at you, you instinctively grasp the ball often, right? That you know what to do, because if you understand a ball and what it is, no one has to tell you. Like, you just reach out and grab the ball, that is it. Or let it hit you. I mean, if that's what you want. I mean, it's not like there's any particular way. It's just a ball, right, that's thrown at you. You react how you react. But by seeing what it is, a ball, and a little more about its nature and understanding it, right, sort of what to do by just paying attention to what's happening. If someone has a ball and they throw it at you and you react to that in that way, you don't think about it a lot, right? And you don't think about how you're going to grasp the ball, right? There isn't really thought in that moment. And maybe that's a little bit of an analogy of the intelligence of now, I suppose. But it's not good to make an analogy, because that, again, is an idea now that you may develop, and use that idea to understand. And that's not you just need to pay attention. It's a nice little sign here. It's relatively new. It's a wood sign, carved. Looks awesome. Welcome to the Working Woods Learning Forest. So yeah, I mean, it's just, let's not complicate things. I guess even today, it's a good day. It's turning out to be great, even with a little rain. It's not pouring down, so it's not something. And again, I didn't know what to do. I just came, and it rained, and I did whatever, and we've done whatever, regardless of rain or shine. We've gone for a walk. We're walking around and enjoying nature. And that's a good word to use, I think, in a circumstance like this. Enjoy, right? There's, I would say there's pleasure and pain in our life, right? And then there's enjoyment. And I don't put enjoyment in the category of pleasure and pain. Because, there's things that are pleasurable, right, in our life that but often pleasure causes you to seek out those pleasurable things. And in that seeking, it can become destructive. And, drugs are a great example of that, right? Drugs can give you a certain degree of pleasure, and you will seek them out as a result. But then it leads to very destructive behaviors, as I think we're all somewhat aware, right? So the harm of pleasure is, it's like a feel-good reward system. And the same thing with pain, right? Pain is like there's something you don't want, and so you go to measures to eliminate something so that it's not there anymore, because it gives you an undesirable thing. In both situations, it's sort of wanting, not wanting, holding on, or pushing away, becoming attached to those things that give you pleasure, and hiding from the things, right? And this is another thing. You can live if you construct your life in such a way that you surround yourself with things that are pleasurable, and then hide away from those things that are not. That is not the same. That is a separation of you from the world that you live in, which has both things in it, right? Pleasurable, not pleasurable, things that you may like, things you may not like, but that is living, that both of those, liking and not liking, are there in daily life, every single day of your life. Things are going to happen that you like, things are going to happen that you don't like. And that can become a roller coaster ride if you're just riding that pleasure versus pain coaster, going up and down and up and down, and it's a bumpy road. It's a bumpy road. But enjoyment, and like I said, is that in a way when you, I don't want to say make peace with that, but when you observe things as they are without judgment, there's no attribution of like or dislike. That's a judgment or an opinion. If you just don't have that opinion, then there is nothing that you're gonna classify in terms of these things. And there's a certain serenity or a peace in the non-application of thought, right, to what's happening in your life, that things are just happening and you're paying attention to those things, and you're not trying to give them a label, because that's thought that tries to label something as good or bad or desirable or undesirable. And then in that just not labeling, right, there's a stepping away, or however, you're just out of the game in some way. And being out of the game, there's an enjoyment. Like, you can enjoy things if you're not constantly worried about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, or what it is. There's just a peace or a serenity, whatever word. I mean, you could even say equanimity, to use a Buddhist phrase. But these words, so what do these words mean? It doesn't mean anything to use words to describe what is. It just is what is. So if you observe and pay attention and don't concern yourself with determining whether what's happening to me now is a good thing or a bad thing, or should I seek it or not seek it, should I pull it in or push it away, if you just are, in that state of, equanimity is a good word. It's just not a lot of people understand what that word means. And it's the thing is, who does understand what that word means? There's no understanding without seeing for yourself what that means. Not as a word, as to be defined, but as a state of being. And that if you just pay attention to things, right? Where is the judgment coming in? And God, we spend so much of our time judging, good, bad, whatever, and it's just is, right? And This day just is. It was raining or not raining. My only concern is, the camera might get wet, and there's consequences of things, right? However you want to look at it. And you can dwell on those consequences, or you can just take one step forward and keep moving through the rain, through whatever, not pushing yourself against it or, hiding from it, but just walking, just walking through it, whatever it is, rain or shine, and that leads to enjoyment because there's no concern, for whether it is good or bad. And enjoyment is just maybe, it's the ending of all this judgment. It is what is there when you stop the striving, the pushing away, the achievement, the holding on, the attachment to things, the worrying about losing things that you're attached to. It's this endless thought game that you also don't want to end up being a game, right? Like, don't make it a game. Again, if thought isn't playing, if thought is absent, if thought is stopped, there is no game, there's no not game, there's no this, there's no that, there's no nothing, right? And that ending of thought is a nothingness, which is another Buddhist word, sunyata, emptiness, which we could use all these words, right? Well, what do they mean? But like, when we stop labeling things, when thought ends and time ends, because thought and time are very much related. Thought is a process of time, right? Thought is a material process occurring in a brain. So it's happening as a result of things happening in the brain, which is a machine, in some way, not a human-built machine, but it is a causal mechanism. And maybe that's how we can regard a machine, that when senses come in, there's a reaction, there's a response, and that sensory response is just happening in the brain. But like, when that process just loses its significance, or maybe you just don't worry about it, right, then there's another state of being, I guess you could say, or a shift in consciousness, if you want to call it that way. Our consciousness now is made up of all the past conditioning that we have, and the sense of me, and everything about me, and that I own possessions, and that endless, that image we built up about ourselves, that if that image is seen for what it is, being an image, right? Not that you can do anything about it, but you can see that image process, the image making, see the image making, see what happened that led to that your life up to this point has been a process of conditioning that has led to that bundle of memories and identity that you refer to as you or me or I, which has led to all your trouble. All the trouble in your life really comes down to that bundle of memories that sits behind everything, judging, processing everything you see through that history of experience, knowledge, and judging everything. And it's just like an endless process of judging. And do you want to continue down that path of just feeding that beast even more and more and more, or seeing that beast for what it is? And in the seeing for what it is, it loses its energy, because it's maintained, it's fed. Think of it as a beast. It's fed by you continually repeating the same actions, right? It's a reinforcement. That as long as you are in that game, and you are playing that game, and you are, your thought leads to action, which then leads to more experience, which leads to more conditioning, which leads to action. And it's like this cycle that's occurring. See that cycle. And in just the seeing of the cycle, right, there's nothing else that needs to happen. than just seeing it. Be clear. That's why this is so simple, because there's nothing other than seeing what's actually happening. You don't have to believe anything. It's not about belief at all. It's the opposite of that. It's truth, which is what is actually happening. What is, indisputably real. Not real as through a creation of the mind. Just what is happening. And then everything follows from that. There's no words to explain what happens when you see something. You observe it. And you can't use words. I mean, poets can sometimes get very descriptive and write beautiful poems about what they're seeing. But it never takes the place of the actual seeing. The actual seeing in that moment, which maybe was required to form those words, that there was a seeing of truth, and then the words sort of flowed, and it can be beautiful. But the words are not the thing. The words are not what was seen. The words are not the truth. You can never go backwards, right? So even reading a beautiful poem, you never can understand what was in the mind of the poet just by reading those words. It may evoke certain feelings or emotions, shared or otherwise, because of language, because we have these associations, but it's never the same. It isn't the same. The limitations of words and knowledge, it's the two key things, I think. If there are key things, are one, recognizing the limitation of thought, language, words. And anything that comes from thought, language, and words, being limited, cannot be a path to truth. So that eliminates almost everything, all authority, right? All systems of thought. So the first thing go of authority, of all kinds, every shape and form, including the authority you may come up with on your own authority, through your own thinking, your own words, because you have those thoughts and words and ideas as well. So first, understanding that all thought is limited, whether it comes from you or from somebody else. That words are just thoughts, right? Words are related to thoughts, images that we have in our mind. So it's just to see that, right? Not even to reject it or, whatever, because rejection is another form of thought. Just seeing the limitations, seeing the nature and structure of the mind, the nature and structure of thinking. And through that seeing, even not even talking about the limitations of it, right, to start with, because that's maybe a judgment. Is it limited? Is it not limited? Observe thoughts and see if they are, if they aren't, right? That's what needs to happen. Just observe the thoughts. Observe your thinking process in every moment of every day. And sometimes it's good to do that while you're angry, while you're experiencing some emotion, because then you see that emotion is tied to thought of some kind or another. And you see the connections and relationships between your emotions, which you might think are separate from thoughts, but then you find that they are evoked, they are intimately tied to thought and thinking as well, right? Someone says something to you that makes you angry, right? If they hadn't said that thing, you wouldn't be angry. So anger is like a response to something that is said, which required thinking. Because thoughts and words, it's thought, and then there's a response to that, and so the emotions that come about, so they are also of thought, of that operation of the brain in that way. And then you can also see how, it could be wrong, right? What somebody said to you, they could say, oh, did you know so-and-so said something about you that was negative? Oh, now you're angry, and you think, I can't believe that person said that to me. And you have an entire reaction based on what that person told you, which you don't even know is true, first of all. And I thought I lost the trail there for a second. So yeah, based on just the words that someone said to you, you react. And now then that person may come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I had it totally wrong. That person did not say that. I heard that from somebody else and it turned out to be a lie. So now you have other words that changes your mind and changes your emotional state. Now you think, oh, I can't believe I got upset over that thing and it wasn't even true, and I don't know what's true, and that's it, right? You don't know when someone tells you something what's true. You don't know. And so you think it's true. You act as if it is. Emotions came about because you saw truth in the words, but if you just saw those words may or may not be true. Anything anyone tells you may or may not be true. So if you don't take it as truth, those emotions don't come, right? You don't react because you don't know. And then, there's another thing. Somebody may do something right in front of you, right? Call you a name, directly, some negative name or whatever. And maybe call you a fool or whatever. All right, so now you see it for yourself. They called you a fool. You can react to that as well, or not react, because you have no idea why they did that, why they called you that, what led them to say that. They could have stubbed their toe and they're in pain and just, they blurt something out, or they're in pain for emotional pain or whatever may cause them, or there may be a very good reason why they did that. You should evaluate, are they right? Am I a fool? I mean, it could be. What do they mean by that? Maybe I said something that wasn't right and they're calling me out on it. Like, instead of just immediately responding to something like that with anger, which might be your first response, just listen to what they're saying. Right? Listen to the words and say, okay, I hear what this person's saying, and there could be a lot of reasons for what they're saying, and you don't know what those reasons are. You don't know everything. You have limited knowledge, right? And this goes to the limitations of knowledge, that because you don't know everything, because you're not omniscient, right? You don't know everything. You only know the few words or whatever was said to you. You don't know the context. You don't understand anything. That just being the awareness of the limitations of that moment, the awareness of the limitations of knowledge, what was said, what the truth is. There's no feeling to react, right? Because the truth is you don't know, and they may be right, they may be wrong. There could be reasons for it. There may not be reasons for it. That doesn't mean you should totally ignore what they say either, because maybe there's some truth to what they're saying. Something could come out of that could improve yourself, or you made a mistake and they're trying to correct that. The skill wise, maybe you're a surgeon and you performed a surgery wrong, and they've come to inform you that you did something wrong that you should probably correct, right? There's a very good reason in that situation for them saying it. The word may not be the nicest word, but like they said something that could benefit. So instead of just rejecting what they said, getting angry, reacting to that, stepping back for a moment and seeing the thought process that's occurring from your immediate reaction to what could be and all this other, like just seeing that whole process, right, that's occurring in your brain. That's complicated, very complicated process that we can't even articulate now. Like we're talking about this process of thinking, but that's not the same as the process of thinking. So you have to observe that process of thinking, what's happening, the thoughts that are occurring, the images, without words. Observe that process of the mind, and really in that observing, you're not reacting. Like you can't almost do two things at the same time, if you want to look at it that way. And when you're just watching, you're not reacting, right? And so just the watching the mind, in some sense, prevents the reaction. It doesn't prevent it. It's watching, not reacting, right? And in the watching, there's intelligence. Reacting is not intelligence, because it's just, you're not fully observing what's happening. You're not watching it and paying attention to that. And so just in this paying attention, this state of paying attention all the time to what's happening, not strenuously, not effort, there is effort, but not, with a intended goal, just the constant awareness of what's happening, it just, there's a different way of being, you know, in that isn't the reactive state that most people are in all the time. You know, that you see, you react immediately because you think your knowledge is truth, and you react according to that partial knowledge, versus just being aware and paying attention, and just not, you know, not having it be that way, not so judgmental, right? So anyways, a lot of words. I think at some point, you know, I feel like the words just are done. I don't know. I think the important thing today was just that I'm glad I got out, got to go for a walk and talk somewhat, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, I guess it is what it is. I record this, and if anything comes of it, it does. If anything doesn't come of it, it does. What came of it is I went for a walk, and it was enjoyable, and it's a good way to start the day. And I'd walk all day if I could, but duty calls. You know, I do have a job, and I have to do my work and get to it. A lot of work to do this week in that regard, and I guess we'll keep exploring the mind together, and hopefully you are not just listening to me. I don't think many people are listening to this, which is fine. But if you are, and you get this far, then just recognize that, if nothing else, maybe this gives you the itch to go out and do, again, I don't want to say do what I'm doing, because, you know, that's repeating something. This is what I do, right? But you may do something else. Whatever your innate intelligence drives you to do, in, you know, your natural way, that is, just follow that, you know, or not follow it, but pay attention. Again, it's just pay attention to yourself and what yourself is telling you. And I'm not going to tell you go out and walk in nature if you don't want to go out and walk in nature. That's what I want to do. That's what I like doing. You may like doing something else. I mean, there's a truth in nature, I think, that gives it a uniqueness, though. There is that, because anything else, right, of the mind. So you may say, well, you know, my thing is social media or whatever. But then you're wrapped up in creations of the mind. And I do think that, but again, pay attention to that, and you'll see that for yourself. I don't have to tell you that. Maybe I'm full of crap. I don't know. You may determine that. But what I am saying for you to observe is that maybe it's worthwhile observing what is true and what is not true. And that this natural world around us, that we came from, that we are from, that we are intimately connected to, is a truth. Or examine if that is truer. Is there a truth there that is not in the world of the imagining, in the world of the creation of the mind, that we get so lost in, and more all the time as our technology evolves and we have more and more ways of propagating thought. It's sort of a self-propagating cycle, you know, maybe like a feedback cycle in some sense, that the more we create, the more technology that we create, the easier it is for thought to take over. We're living in thought-created worlds. And now with AI, right, generating even more fictitious, but lifelike, resembling reality, resembling truth, it's so easy to get caught up in that, right? It's so easy to be misled and to take, you know, AI as reality. And that should be something of a wake-up call, I guess, to us, to see how easy it is to be fooled, you know, to be fooled by this world that we're living in. That's becoming less and less true, I would say, with every passing day. Um, you know, it's just to be aware of that. Like, that is something that we need to really pay attention to see the course of our life and the course of this world and what's happening. And I'm getting bit by mosquitoes right now. Trying not to kill them, but they think they're swarming me. So I need to reverse course and kind of head back out into the open here. I need to use the restroom as well. So I'll come back this way. And, you know, I was just sort of wrapping things up anyways. And I guess just closing with, you know, something soft and maybe not intense and not, you know, thought provoking, and just encouraging, I guess, in some way to get out and into truth. I do think getting into nature is very important. I do think there's no substitute for nature being sort of the storehouse of truth right around us, and that we have to be aware of our actions and how they are affecting nature and the natural world. Because that's another thing we need to pay attention to, is what humans are doing to nature. And seeing that, and seeing that nature is not, you know, it's not this infinitely adaptable thing. There are limits to what we can do in nature before we destroy it. I mean, clearly you can cut down a tree, right? There's actions we can take that can destroy nature. Cutting down a tree is an example of it. And if we cut down all the trees here, all this nature would be gone. And if we cut down all the trees everywhere in the world, we'd be in a lot of trouble. We would not survive in a world without trees. But again, this is just observe this, like that. And so what it really means is there are activities that can be very harmful to the natural world that we need to be aware of. And that doesn't mean we can't live in this world, but we have to find a way of living in this world that doesn't destroy this world. Looks like wild raspberries. Probably could eat those, but not going to. So I just, you know, we have to pay attention to what's happening in this world. Like, so many things are happening. Wars are being fought, and our environment is changing. We're using up resources. You know, we just have to be aware of what's happening. And people that, you know, if you become ideological even about that, like, just, it doesn't need to be, you know, I mentioned something like that and you may have an immediate reaction. Oh, there's another liberal environmentalist or something trying to tell me how to live my life. And it's like, no, I'm not actually. I'm just telling you to be aware of your actions, to be aware of what you do. I mean, in your own household, you know that there's certain things that benefits your house and certain things that doesn't benefit your house. This is not magic, and it's not ideology, and it's not liberalism, right, to say, I know I have to take out my garbage, I have to sweep in my house, I have to do the dishes. If I were to, like, burn wood in my house and create all kinds of smoke, I wouldn't be able to breathe. So there's certain things, like I may have a fireplace, right, but it goes up the chimney. This is intelligence, right? Intelligence is just being aware of your actions and how they are affecting your immediate environment, which is your household. But also, those actions don't just end at your household, right? They extend beyond that to your neighborhood around you, to your city, state, country, to the world, right? So you can't think what I do in my own house matters, but then you don't care what you do outside of your house, because it's just expanding your house to a larger area. So we have to be aware this entire earth is our house, right? It's all of our house. We all live in the same house called the earth. And just like we have to do the dishes and we have to take care of our house, maintain our house, you don't chop the wood down of your house to make a fire and then let the rain go through your roof or something, or now you don't have a wall anymore. Like, there's a certain order to things, and there's an order in this world as well, that if we don't take care of this planet, it will not take care of us. And it's just common sense. I mean, I think most people see this, right? So we have to care about the quality of the water. We have to care about how we might be polluting the air the water, the ground, and how we're affecting other animals on this planet. Because, you know, we live in an ecosystem where all the animals need to live together. Like this, there's a harmony to this planet. You can't eliminate other species without there being a consequence. So we have to be aware of the actions that we take, you know, and how it may be affecting other species, which in turn will affect us because we're all intimately connected. So this, again, this is just something, it's not whether I tell you this and you believe it or don't believe it. None of this is about belief. Just go out and observe nature, and you will see these things that I'm talking about, this balance of nature, all around you. I mean, it's here right now. And all you have to do is open your eyes. And then you don't have to listen to anybody. Just pay attention to what you are seeing, what you are understanding by just being aware of your environment. And to go out into nature is a very important way of that happening. Because I don't think we want to see this natural world be destroyed, because it'll destroy us, as well as destroying the world, you know. Okay, so I think that's it. I better call it quits here, and until next time.